Today we're going to be talking about Chinese diet therapy for children and how Chinese medicine views a kid's body and what's maybe a little bit different about them to an adult. So before we get started, before you watch this video, I suggest that you watch my previous video about Chinese diet therapy just in general. So then you'll have an understanding of how the body works, and we'll kind of review a little bit of that today, but that's a good place to start. So with kids, what's kind of different about kids to an adult? So if we review the digestive system of an adult, if you think of the stomach like that cooking pot on the stove, and the spleen is like the fire, the digestive fire below the pot. When we talked about adults, we said that adults should eat mostly, they like to have warm, moist and cooked. Your spleen and stomach dislikes cold, dry and raw. So kids are pretty much the same as this, except that their digestive system is still maturing. Okay, from birth up to age 5, we would say that their spleen energy, this birth to 5, that their spleen energy is maturing. It's not that it's weak. It's just that it's maturing. It's getting ready. It's not born with the same ability to digest foods like an adult, and that's really obvious with kids. They don't know flavors yet. They're learning and they're exploring foods. And when they're born, obviously a baby drinks breast milk. So what we want to do is we want to facilitate that growth and that maturation of their digestive system, and kind of not destroy that with overwhelming their body. So what happens with a kid is they can easily be overwhelmed with flavors, with too much volume of food. Little kids are still exploring how much they can eat, and as an adult, I'm sure you've had a situation where you've eaten more than you should have eaten. So you go to an all-you-can-eat buffet when you're a youngster, and you kind of eat and eat and eat, and then you're like, oh, I'm giving birth to a food baby and I'm getting really full. Well, kids are just exploring that, and that's quite often that they'll overeat. Especially you take a kid to a birthday party, they'll kind of eat too much sugar and a lot of heavier, denser foods that they might not normally have. They run around, they get all excited, and next thing you know, they're throwing up and vomiting all over the place. So one of the other things that's special about kids is because their systems, as alongside of this, is that they have this exuberant yang. So in Chinese medicine, you've got yin and yang, right? So yin is the dense, heavy, storage kind of parts of your body. Think about day and night, so night being yin and day being yang. Yang is activity, movement. So it's like a comparative system. So if you think of someone that's standing and moving, that person's more yang than someone that's sitting and doing nothing, sitting at a desk. So it's not that things are absolute, but it's in comparison to each other. So yang is really function, right? And yin is storage and the physical part of the body. So if you think of this is a system, like if this was your cooking, like your stove, or your fire and your stove, and this is your pot, these aspects, like before we've turned them on or put anything in them, they're yin. They're just a solid pot and a stove. But as soon as you turn that fire on, the fire is the yang, right? And as soon as that fire's there, then whatever's in the pot is going to start to heat up, and if you don't have anything in there, it's going to start to burn. So that process, that function, is that yang. And kids have heaps of that because they need that. They need to actually grow and develop, and their bones are growing, their body's growing, they're going through all these stages of change. And so that's why they get hyperactive. It's normal for kids to get hyperactive. It's normal for them to have heaps of energy, why they can run around all day. It's not normal for them to not have that kind of energy. So there's a few things we can talk about with diet therapy. These are very broad kind of concepts. So if you've got a kid, or as an adult, you're not sure what your diagnosis is, where you should start, then it's good to go and see a Chinese medicine practitioner, because they're going to be able to give you the step-by-step process to work out what your diagnosis is. So they'll usually check your pulse and maybe ask you some questions, work out what's wrong, where there's a disharmony there. And we do that exactly the same for kids as we do with adults. But these are just general principles that can be applied to everyone. So we may tweak foods particularly, like in my practice I use foods like I would use medicines. So sometimes I'll say you should have more bitter foods, or you should have more pungent foods, or you should have like more lighter and not so much dense foods, different things like that. We might give you a list of foods you can eat and add into your diet. But that always falls on top of this advice. So this is the same advice I'd give to every kid, no matter what's really wrong with it. And I think one of the biggest parts is to understand it. So that's why I've made this video, so you can kind of explore and understand the concepts, and then it's much more easier to apply them if you know why it is how it is. So we've got the spleen and stomach sitting there doing their job. The spleen is like the fire below the pot, digesting the food. And then with kids, we've got this spleen that's still maturing, so it's not 100% as it should be. And that means that kids are easily susceptible to being overwhelmed. Like, let's just say that their spleen gets overwhelmed. And then you've also got their food intelligence, if you like, is kind of growing and maturing. So how much do I eat? When do I stop? Like, there's all this food there. Do I just, I'm just going to eat till it's finished? That sort of stuff. So you've got, kids kind of exploring those ideas. And you've also got they've got this exuberant yang. So that exuberant yang actually allows them to eat probably a lot more food than an adult could eat without as much damage to their body actually. So they can digest things that not as such a youngster, but in the teenage years, that's why you could probably eat so much like chocolate or lollies, or even like lots of burgers and bad food, if you like. And not put on weight, because you've got this yang, like, basically digesting all this stuff that you eat. And then the other thing is, as a kid, especially as a little kid, you're not bogged down by all the diseases and illnesses that are kind of stuck in your body from being an adult. So it's not that diseases are stuck in you, but it's like every time you get sick, it weakens you. And if you didn't get better from being sick, your body's just like a little bit weaker, or you didn't have good sleep for a few years, now you're tired, your body's taxed and it's getting all tired, and kids don't have that. So they get sick real easy, they get really high fevers really easy because they've got this exuberant yang, so they get heat and stuff. Like, it seems like they get a lot of heat easy. Like, if they get a snotty nose, it's not uncommon for it to become yellow or sticky kind of phlegm, ear infections, lots of stuff up the top in the head, because that's what yang does, it goes upwards. So there's a few things that are special about kids that we would say, like, okay, with a kid, yes, you can give them warm, moist and cooked, stay away from cold, dry and raw. But for kids particularly, we have a few other things. We say, like, if the food looks phlegmy or snotty, like snot's the, runny nose stuff, if a food looks like that, it's not clear, then it's probably going to make snot in their body. It's going to make phlegm. So for instance, bananas, avocado, those foods are thicker foods, right? So that's not good for kids, especially younger kids like this age. I wouldn't give kids any of that stuff. I know that might be a really common food that a lot of parents give their kids. So one way of kind of treating your kids with diet therapy is firstly by trying to eliminate as many possibilities that it could be, and getting back to what we call a clear, bland diet. So the clear, bland diet just means that firstly it's warm, moist and cooked, not overwhelmed with too many flavours. Not too much processed food. So you want to watch the first video that I did about packets and processing foods and how that creates dampness. If kids cannot tolerate dampness, their body will just get easy get dampness, which is like getting a runny nose. So if your kid goes to a birthday party and then they've got come home and they get sick, they've eaten too much dampening foods. So foods that create dampness will usually be a lot of sweet and a lot of processed. So cakes and lollies and sugary things and processed foods. you know, and fried foods as well. Those things all lead to dampness. So we want to try to avoid those things, right? Maybe for an adult they could have those things once in a while here and there, but for kids, they find those things like really easy to flare up their problems. So one of the ways you can treat kids is just by simply starting with the diet. Like, they respond really easily because of their exuberant yang usually, and because of the nature of their body. You can often treat kids with diet first. One of the problems with treating them with diet is if the kid's already used to those flavours, it can be really hard to stop them from eating that. What else do they eat? So making snack time fun, doing different things that you know, you can give them a little bit of raw foods. So they could have a little bit of carrots or you know, chopped up vegetables that are raw. But if the kid's got diarrhea, don't give them raw foods. Just stay away from those raw foods. So diarrhea means there's coldness there, and so the food is like it's too challenging for the weak or the immature spleen energy to deal with. You know, some kids can be sick over and over and over, and they take a lot of antibiotics, and that will damage the spleen chi. That will make it weaker. Because antibiotics in Chinese medicine are cold, so it kind of, you know, challenges that spleen too much, and it just can't keep up, and then they've got this, you know, consistent, which then leads to quite often more and more antibiotics being prescribed. So you know, before you with that sort of situation, I think you should go and see a practitioner, but you could also implement some of this diet stuff as well as you transition towards that. So with kids, yeah, we want to stay away from these phlegm producing or damp producing foods, and that's the first thing to do. The other thing that kids suffer with a lot is like a food stagnation problem. So basically just simply overeating. This happens a lot with babies. If you demand feeding a baby, then quite often they can overeat. So with Chinese medicine, we would say probably 4 hourly feeds is good. So you want to get into the routine. In an adult as well, we would say your stomach likes to be full and empty, full and empty. So it's not just sitting there digesting food all day long. So when you're digesting food, you're doing that. You want all your blood flow going to your digestion to do that job. When you're not digesting food, then you know, your blood flow can go to your brain and to other areas of your body that it needs. It's not concentrating, like your body's not competing for that blood flow here and in different parts of your body. So for babies, if you can get them into that routine as soon as possible, rather than demand feeding. So as soon as if you're starting that demand feeding, then they're using that as a pacifying. They might not actually even need that food, and then they're getting food stagnation. So sometimes babies get like distension, their stomach or their abdomen will sort of bloat out a little bit. They can have, because of their exuberant yang, they can create like heat. So it'll seem like they've got heat in their body, and they get dry stools. So, you know, constipated, they've got red face, they're trying to get that poop out, they can't do it. So sometimes it can be one of those reasons. Like if that's the case with a baby, you need to take them to your healthcare practitioner and actually have that assessed. But you know, this is not a replacement for a medical consultation, or for going to see your GP, or if your kid's got a fever or something like that, take it to the hospital or your GP or your Chinese medicine practitioner. This is just general kind of diet and lifestyle advice. It's not meant to replace the common sense of going to a doctor when you need to do that. Yeah, so that's basically what happens with kids. They get that, they've got this exuberant yang, so they easily get things flaring up. But the good thing is that because they're not bogged down with all stuff as an adult is, they get sick quick, but they get better really quickly. So they do respond to Chinese medicine quite more like quicker than an adult. They typically need less time of taking herbs. If your kid gets fevers or gets sick, and it's normal to get sick. That's a sign that your body's healthy, that it can get sick. And so you can use acupuncture as well. Quite often with acupuncture we use for babies, we use points on the fingers, sometimes on the legs. With acupuncture for little kids and babies, the points are basically in and out, and you know, if they're not left in too long. There's tons of other things we can treat with kids, and you can have a check out for the next videos, so you can find out things like how we would treat ADHD or ADD type of attention kind of problems, and other things. Thanks for watching.